right, boys, in this video, we learned the story of Cowboy James. We learned about a legendary small block, and we also figure out how we're bringing two of you guys to U.S. Street Nationals next weekend. Let's go. If my nose was wheels, it'd be 26.
He ran what?
Ran an altered with an inline 6.
No shit.
Loaded 420 at 1 inch.
Off of Highway 287 sits Bellevue, Texas. Settled in the late 1870s, it grew into a railroad town in 1882 and was incorporated by 1902. But just 4 short years later, it was wiped out by a violent tornado, only leaving 4 buildings standing. But Bellevue didn't die. Built back by grit, sweat, and I guess stubborn pride, it's a town where legends are born, live, and sometimes fade, often inside the walls of the Eagle Mart. And today, that's where we are, and we're going to tell the great story of my friend Cowboy James. Cowboy, can you tell us your name?
Yeah, James Lawrence.
Cowboy, how long you been cowboying?
Well, all my life, but 15 years on the same ranch in this last run.
Do you mind if I ask you what happened to your neck?
Well, I was young, in 92-ish, somewhere in there in my early 20s. I was racing Sacramento area Pro-Am circuit, where they have the 200s and 500s running together. And I was battling one guy. I was quicker in the turns and the short stints. So he decided he was going to try to jump over me and couldn't quite get that done. Landed on my head and I woke up in the hospital a couple days later in a brace, and that was excruciating pain.
Cowboy, what do you do as a cowboy on a daily basis?
Pretty much everything. Between me and Clifford, we run 400 head of cattle on 4,000 acres. And not only that, but to keep on top of anything that goes wrong, that will go wrong.
And how did Brunt Boots come into the picture on this whole deal?
Well, they came to you, and I just so happened to be needing a pair of boots. And we made a little deal, got them for me. And I've truly been blown away by how comfortable they are right out of the box. Man, even from all the racing, kicking it at the track on the concrete, to whether I'm kicking gates shut at the ranch or kicking Clifford in the butt for making me walk through all the mud through some of these gates where it's all foul weather. They are perfect.
We really appreciate Brunt Workwear supporting the Jimmy Dale Racing YouTube channel. And right now, you guys can get $10 off when you use code COWBOY at bruntworkwear.com/cowboy. You can also put in the promo code COWBOY as well. Cowboy, thanks for sitting with me and telling me your story. I already knew it, but these kind folks didn't. And thanks to Brunt Workwear for supporting the Jimmy Dale Racing YouTube channel. Come on, baby.
Sold that cow.
The Lord built me a cabin in the corner of glory land.
All right, we made it out here. This engine right here is a self-racing 417 cubic inch. The paperwork says this thing makes 910 horsepower on straight motor.
Hey, bud, I got a better idea. Why don't we just leave this up to the professionals? Brian, can you help me out here?
Caddo, Oklahoma is a town of about 1,000 people in the southern part of the state. It's not a fancy place, and it's just down the road from the larger town of Durant. And that motor Jimmy's got on his hands has some real, and I mean real, Durant, Oklahoma drag racing magic built into it. See, Durant, Oklahoma, and more specifically a small unassuming building on Locust Street, they were ground zero for some of the most innovative, interesting, and downright ass-kicking developments in drag racing engines for decades. The Self Boys, Glenn the dad, Kevin the son, and even Brian, their nephew and cousin respectively, did things in that building that helped hundreds of racers run their best, win a ton, and oftentimes left their competitors wondering what the hell just happened to him. Glenn Self grew up in the family auto repair shop, and it was in that shop that he earned a doctorate degree in hands-on engineering. This was not a formally educated man in the traditional sense, but the formative years in the shop taught him how to solve problems, how to fix and make basically anything, and most importantly, it taught him to fall in love with cars. It didn't take long for this young guy to form the itch to go racing when he was old enough, and he did that, but he did it with a twist. Glenn Self loved beating guys with V8 engines using inline sixes. Maybe it was the challenge, the underdog nature, maybe he liked the design, but it would be the signature of his racing career. A series of street cars brought him to his first race car, a modified production Chevy 2 known as Big Six. Success in that car had him graduate to a 1967 Camaro that would take a young guy from Caddo, Oklahoma, and put him on the national drag racing map. The Stormin' Six was the car's name, and in 1969, Glenn Self drove its screaming 292 cubic inch, formerly hay truck inline six engine to a street eliminator win at the 1969 NHRA US Nationals, the most prestigious drag race on the planet. It wasn't just a win. This was a moment that changed Glenn Self's life, and even larger than that, it set Glenn Self on a course to be able to affect the upcoming future of drag racing with multiple generations of his family. Suddenly, Glenn Self and his Glenn Self's Racing Engines business went from a hopeful and growing hobby to a full-time enterprise, an enterprise making power for others and using that mechanical brilliance he had cultivated as a kid to innovate and advance the building of engines. The cylinder head work he had done on the 292 inline six Chevrolet and the Camaro, along with every other aspect of the engine, allowing it to spin 8,000 to 9,000 RPM and run low 12s, was astounding to people. As much as Glenn Self was known as an inline six and later V6 guy with his work on Buicks, he did and would and could build anything and everything in terms of engines, as Jimmy Dale now knows. Glenn's son Kevin began working at the shop as a kid, and like his father before him, he got the education of a lifetime working next to a master. By the time Kevin Self could reach the top of the workbench, he was porting cylinder heads and learning the ins and outs of things people 10 times his age had not garnered in a lifetime. For his 13th birthday, Glenn presented his son Kevin with a flow bench.
It's got flow bench charts for the heads. Flow 420 at 1 inch, 420 at 900, 416 at 800.
Those are some gangsters then.
Yeah, they definitely move from wind.
Glenn's nephew Brian started working at the shop at the age of 12, eventually porting cylinder heads next to Kevin in the 1980s. And of course, Brian would go on and continue to be an incredible crew chief in the sport of drag racing with a diversified career through pro stock and many sportsman ranks. Brian Self is still out there pounding the pavement today. Building drag racing engines, stock car engines, V8s, inline sixes, V6s, and more, they can and did work on everything. The cylinder heads were their calling card, though, and their most well-known strength. When Kevin stepped away from drag racing for a time, concentrating on racing closer to home at the sand drags and on the business, Glenn and Brian Self were on the road, racing relentlessly. Diabolically innovative, Self Racing was doing things with cylinder heads no one else was contemplating yet. Glenn developed and made all the tooling and various specific equipment they used in-house. And finally, one day the phone rang with a big company on the other end looking for a partnership. That company? Brodix. The partnership the Self Boys and Brodix formed was awesome. They teamed up on developing cylinder heads, intake manifolds, even specific parts like the incredibly tricked port invader, which allowed for cylinder head ports to be opened to previously impossible levels while keeping the fastener and head integrity intact. Pop a Brodix catalog open today, and the Self Racing name shows up in it a lot. It was during a lunchtime conversation about the difficulty of properly porting the long, curved runners and tall, single-plane intake manifolds that Kevin Self was struck with an idea. He sawed an intake manifold, one of those big, tall, long runner jobs, smooth in half, allowing for full access to every inch of the ports, and then he put the two halves back together. Of course, the multi-piece intake manifold was not normal in drag racing at that time. In fact, it didn't exist in the sport until that very moment. And this was yet another innovation that came from that little shop in Oklahoma. Glenn would win the 1985 Fall Nationals in Phoenix, runner-up at Indy that year, and score another win on the IHRA Tour. After returning to drag racing in the early 2000s, Kevin and Glenn embarked on a new adventure in their career. They championed the development of the GM 4200 Series Atlas dual overhead camshaft inline 6. This was the famed Trailblazer engine, kind of an American Barra or even an American 2JZ in some circles. This engine would carry Kevin to multiple national event wins, but most notably, the 2016 U.S. Nationals. 47 years after his dad won with an inline 6, Kevin Self, with his dad wrenching on the car, won the race with an engine they built, innovated, and did the job just like always. Kevin and Glenn worked together for decades. Brian Self, who spent many years in the shop and on the road with them, said he cannot remember a single instance of them ever raising their voices at one another. A father and son super team who were able to take practical experience and dedication, loads of work and passion, and turn it into one of the most respected cylinder head and engine building outfits in the country. Jimmy, that engine you've got your hands on, it was produced by some of the sharpest minds and finest craftsmen that the sport of drag racing has ever known. The cylinder heads on that thing are the product of 2 generations' work, knowledge, and skill. We lost Kevin and Glenn a few years back in quick succession, and sad as that may be, I know they're smiling, dude, because they know this engine is going to be singing to the heavens. And those heads, those pieces that are more like some kind of drag racing industrial artwork, those babies will be flowing air and fuel through them when you're hammered down on the drag strip. So there you go, pal. That's a pocket lesson on the Self Boys for you. Now, get out there and give them hell with that animal you got on your hands, man. Good luck, dude. See you soon.
I want to talk to you about Cowboy James. So Cowboy is a pretty big part of our family. And since we've stopped racing locally as much, he hasn't been able to be as involved as we would all like. And between his back, his hips, the way the economy is set up, we just cannot afford to miss work and the travel expenses and just all the things that comes with traveling and racing at this level. So last week when Jimmy told me that the motor was ready at Henson's, I was thinking in my head, like, what the hell are we going to do with another motor? Which is, it just starts accumulating and you're like, what the hell are you going to do with all this stuff? And so I thought, like, the best thing to do with this thing is to raffle it off so that we can afford to get James on the road with you again. And so that's what I'm here kind of rambling on to explain to you that the goal is to be able to afford to get Cowboy to as many races this season as possible. So this will help financially be able to take care of our dude. It'll be $100 per spot. Buy 2 spots, get 1 free. Go onto the Jimmy Dale Racing Facebook page and just comment what numbers you want, or if you just want randoms. The winners will win a choice of the self-racing engine, which is turnkey, ready to go, and it will be delivered to you from Jimmy after World Series of Promo. Or an all-expenses-paid trip to U.S. Street, the weekend flights, your hotel, and VIP starting line access with Jimmy and the boys. And also a third person would also be in whatever a word. Third runner-up, third person could win a Nitrous Express kit for their hot rod. So now what I want you to do is go to the Jimmy Dale Racing Facebook page, comment what spots you want, because it's live right now. Thank you. Jimmy, how do I turn this thing off?
Like this.
Never been a sinner, I never sinned.